There's something so special about the feeling of progression in video games, of starting out in a relatively weaker state and then growing stronger and surmounting previously insurmountable challenges as time progresses. Some games, of course, bake that into the design of their narrative itself. You come across a boss, you are defeated, get stronger and build yourself back up, and then go on to defeat them in another encounter later on. In this feature, we're going to be talking about a few such comeback stories. Note there are spoilers ahead for all the games we'll be talking about, so if we begin discussing a game that you haven't played yet, skip ahead to the next entry. KHOTUN Khan, Ghost of Tsushima. When KHOTUN Khan lands on the island of Tsushima with his Mongol fleet in the opening minutes of Ghost of Tsushima, he sweeps them away with a devastating victory. Jin tries to take him on mano a mano not long afterward, but of course he doesn't fare much better. After turning into the ghost over the course of the game and weakening the Mongols' hold on the island, Jin takes on KHOTUN Khan once more as the game draws to a close, and this time completely turns the table. The final boss fight against KHOTUN Khan is still challenging enough, but watching Jin defeat the Mongol general is still incredibly satisfying.
Kill me, and another will come.
The boss, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. Snake suffers an almost total defeat in the opening of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater while rescuing Sokolov. Going up against his mentor, Snake gets into a CQC battle with the boss. A few seconds later, and getting his arm broken, the boss throws Snake from the bridge and right into the river below it. Fortunately, Snake recovers, and then later during the end of the mission Snake Eater, Snake finally takes down the boss in a rather devastating and emotional scene. SEATH the Scaleless Dark Souls. Basically every boss in the Souls series could qualify for a place on this list, but SEATH the Scaleless from the first Dark Souls deserves a special mention. The first encounter against the Duke turned Dragon in the archives is one where a quick and painful death is the only possible outcome. Going back to him later on in the game with a hopefully much more powerful character still leads to an extremely challenging boss fight, which means that eventual feeling of victory is that much sweeter when you finally do defeat him. JETSTREAM Sam, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. When Raiden first goes up against JETSTREAM Sam in the opening act of Metal Gear Rising, he pretty much gets cut in half, well, almost. He loses an eye and an arm, and comes within seconds of getting executed as well. A stroke of luck allows him to live to fight another day, of course, and when Sam and Raiden square off against each other for a rematch later on in the game, things go much more smoothly for our favorite cyborg ninja. Genichiro, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. Like Dark Souls, Sekiro 2 is full of boss fights where you're probably going to get defeated in your first attempt, but the first encounter against Genichiro is a boss fight you have to lose for narrative reasons. Even if you manage to somehow defeat him, he pulls the old lose in a boss fight, win in a cutscene trick. The fight against him later on in the game is an absolutely grueling one as well, especially after his Way of Tomoe transformation, but when victory does eventually come, it comes with a swelling sense of pride and accomplishment. ZEUS God of War 2. God of War games have always been associated with bombastic intros, and God of War 2 was no different in that regard. But even though Kratos manages to defeat a literal colossus early on in the game, he gets betrayed by Zeus and sent to the depths of the underworld. Not for the first time, and not for the last. Kratos is nothing but stubborn though, and that betrayal kicks off a violent ride, and even though he doesn't kill Zeus until the very end of God of War 3, he does manage to go back to that aforementioned moment of betrayal and defeat Zeus in another encounter. Abby, The Last of Us Part 2. This one's a little complicated, given the fact that by the time The Last of Us Part 2 comes to a close, Ellie and Abby have both played the role of the protagonist and the antagonist in equal measure. After doing what she does to Joel and Jackson, Abby climbs to the top of Ellie's hit list. After a harrowing journey across the country, the two of them lock horns once more, and Abby emerges victorious once again. Round 3 sees a different result though, with Ellie coming within seconds of killing a significantly weakened Abby before a change of heart results in both of them surviving the encounter and going their separate ways.
him.
Second Sister, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Set in a time when the Empire's authority is absolute and the Jedi are more or less extinct, former Padawan Cal Kestis was never going to have much of a shot at victory at one of the Jedi hunting Inquisitors, and his first encounter against the Second Sister predictably results in a quick and easy victory for her. Cal becomes much more familiar with the ways of the Force over the course of Fallen Order, of course, and when he faces off against the Second Sister again on Zepho, he's much better prepared for a more even fight, and this time it's a challenge he's able to successfully overcome. Collectors Mass Effect 2. Sure, there is no actual boss fight against the Collectors in the beginning of Mass Effect 2, and the loss that you suffer to them comes in a cutscene rather than through gameplay, but we still feel compelled to mention this. After losing his ship, much of his crew, and even his life to a surprise attack from the Collectors in the opening minutes of the game, Shepard literally returns from the dead, gathers a team of elite operatives, jumps headfirst into a suicide mission, and manages to destroy the home base of the Collectors, depending on your choices, of course. Nemesis, Resident Evil 3. Both in the original Resident Evil 3 and the remake, the bioweapon known as Nemesis is an absolute nuisance who makes life miserable for Jill on more than one occasion. Given his nature as an unstoppable killing machine, naturally he comes out on top in many encounters against her, until the very end that is. As it turns out, Jill sticking a railgun in the monstrosity's mouth and blowing a hole through the back of its horrifyingly deformed head turns out to be the blow that finally kills him.
And that wraps it up. If you like what we are doing, please consider subscribing to our channel, and don't forget to switch on the bell notification icon. That way you will never miss out on any of our videos.